gap between what you need and what revenue provides.
I wondered about that.
Okay,
So we
so
won't
it's an
know
addition
until
to
we do the expense side.
I'm sorry?
So that will be determined after the expense,
Yeah, it's a combination of expenses is the short of it.
the operating.
Don't.
The operating budget, so it's
So,
back in.
well, so it's not
It's
any
the
different.
last step. Yeah.
Caroline is trying to say it's the last step, it's not, and it's not
Yeah.
revenue, so.
So
It doesn't show up.
So the expenses, which is not just the operating budget, but it's also the capital items, minus whatever you're bringing in from funds to pay for the capital items, minus whatever revenue you're bringing in that can help support the operating budget. It is all of that all together, taking into consideration what's going on in fund balance, and then you're dividing what you need to raise for money by the assessed value of the town. The taxable assessed value of the town.
And where does the state
And then capital P.
calculation fit into the picture?
That's it.
So
Do we
it's,
have to fit within that number?
well, they provide, they take a bunch of reports about what we've brought in for revenue, what we think we're gonna continue to bring in for revenue, what we,
Oh, no, the rest are
what we
regular.
did or
I'm sorry.
didn't do from capital items that were approved and what we brought in for
It's
revenue for
capital
those.
R, capital P.
And they suggest a tax rate, based on that information, plus the year-end financials from the year before. And with that, they suggest a rate that the select board then can very minorly adjust.
So the work we're doing now with the budget will not impact the tax rate for sure until a year from now. We won't know it, we can estimate it based on what we think revenue's gonna be, but we think the property tax base is, but it doesn't know
Well,
for sure.
And there are nitpicky things that can make some of that not really affect the tax rate until the following year even. Decisions sometimes take a year or two to play out to get the year-end financials to see whether they really happen or not.
With all that,
Is it now 6:30?
it's 6:30. We are, Paul's excused, and Robert, meeting, sorry. He could make it, so those two,
So he's just water just.
there's no order. So I'll call the meeting to order now at 6:30 p.m. Quickly put my notes up, all right? So we have Denise is here, Angela's here. Emily is not here. Paul is excused, Lynn is here, Charlie George is here, Jodesh is here, Charlie Dion is here, Peter Antisis is here, Rand's excused, meeting, sorry, I'm here and Dan is here. Okay. I think the first item we have on the agenda is approval of the minutes, and I think we have two sets of minutes to go through. So can I get a motion to, probably ought to start with the 6th was the October 6th minutes, or we should bring it down. We've got two sets of minutes. Can somebody remind me which?
So 11/6 is one.
Sorry?
11/6 is one, November 6th.
11/6 and 11/13. So let's start with 11/6. If I have a motion to approve, or then we can discuss. So a motion on the 11/6 minutes from Charlie, second by Charlie. Any discussion, questions, revisions? Could you spell my name Jon instead of J-O-N?
Yeah.
That's my only one.
It's always the names.
Always the names.
Always the names.
Any other
I think
discussion?
you spelled Megan wrong too. How'd you spell it?
Did I put a H or no H?
Is it just one E?
I think it's two
Is
G's
it
in
two
it.
E's and GAN? Okay,
You just check that.
we just verified, that's all.
Okay.
I might be wrong then, I thought it was this one.
Any other discussion? All in favor of approving, say aye. Any opposed? That's done. Next one would be the 11:13 minutes. Motion to accept. Charlie? Second from Angela. Any discussion?
I wasn't here, but I just noticed that we referred to Kate as Karen at some point in the minutes.
The name, it's the name.
So, minor thing, I think everybody knew what it was all about, but officially,
Yeah,
Okay.
correct, to make sure that's right. All in favor of approving, say aye. Any opposed? Okay, that order of business is done. The next item is budget presentations, and we're starting with library. So, Dan, come up and if anybody doesn't already have a hard copy, there's one here.
Oh, no, I was gonna hand it to you.
Anybody else?
thank you.
The library director, couldn't be here tonight, so I am the chair of the board of library trustees. And, when we meet at our monthly meeting every month, we all review the budget every month and we, kind of keep an eye on things as we're going along. I am not a absolute expert, so there may be questions that you have that I will have to get an answer for you. But Sarah did prepare a couple of highlights for you that I can read off my sheet, and then I'll be happy to answer what I can. The 2020 budget is a 3.85 increase from the 2019 budget. The 2020 rent, if you didn't know, the library, we rent from the Cutter family properties. He normally does a 5% increase, and we talked him down this year because we did some renovations to our space, and it will be a 2.12 increase for 2020 on rent. The 2020 director's salary was increased at 2% based on the projected federal cost of living increase. The actual increase was announced to be 1.6 in October, but the budget had already been prepared in July. I don't know what the town plans to do, but typically the library matches whatever raising you're all doing for all the other directors and managers of departments in town, and it's gonna be 2%. The Atrium software line reflects what we actually paid in 2019 for the software, with functionality that is required. And basically what that means is, over the last 2 years, we had to upgrade our software in the library to manage the collection in order to participate with the state library system. We are in great standing with the state library and have access to collections of every other library in the state through the interlibrary loan system. Our books have to be cataloged in a certain way in order for us to be part of their larger statewide software program, and that's what that software is for. So when we started the library, we had a very basic pedestrian version of library management software that was super cheap, because that's what we could afford at the time, and that cost is, I think, stabilizing now that we've had this new software in place and we kind of know what the expense is going to be year to year. So it's only been in place for, I think, last year was the first year, and then the portion of this year that's gone by. So we should probably have that pretty stabilized after this year. Program and services increased by less than 1%, and the 2020 budget was created based on the real spending in 2019. And for anyone who is not familiar with how our budget works, we need to include everything in the budget that we spend, even if it's offset by revenue that the library receives for donations or from the Friends group that supports us or our book sale, because all of those are unpredictable amounts of money that we may get year to year. They're never the same. But that's included in the actual numbers of the budget, and then the offsetting is at the bottom. So I think that's what she means by that, is what we really spent on things in 2019, is what we based the 2020 budget on. So that's what I have. I actually did do that.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Do you know why there's a discrepancy between your total here and what we're seeing in the town? Unless I'm not reading it correctly?
Can you tell what line that is?
Yes, it's on page 8, and it is, I think it's page 9, actually. Page 9, and it's line 255. And I'm reading a total of 80,935, and this is 81,213.
I have no idea. I don't have anything to do with how you put that together, so.
It's on the employment one, so if you look at this worksheet and then this one, it's off that difference. And it's on
I'm
the-
sorry, it's what?
It's on the employment section, so if you look at,
So it is from one version of ours to the next?
yeah, so this
Okay.
version has 81,212, but this one has 89,35.
Okay.
And the section that's off is the.
Okay, so what is the actual figure that the library is proposing?
Whatever your latest version of it is, which would be the sheet I brought you tonight, which is probably the one that's different from what got, is this the number that's in your town budget, this older one? Does that match?
I think we just got it at the same time.
Yeah, the electronic one I
Yeah,
got
we
today
got-
is
we got this one.
89,35.
It's the same, okay. I can ask Sarah what
Right now, we're going to assume that the figure that's at the bottom of the summary, which does equate to the one in the town, is probably the correct figure.
I don't know, because this is what she handed me today as the version that we've been working off of. So I don't know where that came from, so I will have to check with her
Okay.
and we'll clarify the discrepancy.
Fine.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Assistant library. Last year's budget was 6912. This year it's 9,126. How come?
We have currently employed some very highly qualified staff. One of our librarians is also a librarian at the Rochester Public Library and is getting her MLS in library science. One of the other people that's newer, who I think is not the one that got the increase, is also got a ton of experience, and I think it has to do with who is hiring her now.
It's 32% increase.
It may have to do with the hours as well.
That's what was gonna be my question.
Yeah.
Because there's a position that goes from 5,600 to 0.
Yeah,
And so I'm wondering, did you shift, because the library assistant and then the assistant librarian each got an increase of, wait a minute, I'm looking at, it's hard to keep the lines straight, but the assistant librarian 1 and assistant librarian 2, one goes to 0 and the other increases. And it looks as if you've taken a position and given people, current existing staff, more hours, but
we also shifted around a little bit so that we could accommodate some subs, because we have had issues with one, right now at the library, only one person is ever working at any given time.
right.
And there was potentially nobody to sub and we would have to close. So the decision was made this year that we would put some money in a line, and that may have been part of how Sarah was moving that money around. I'd have to total that up and see what it is. I don't think it's a 32% increase over what we were paying the staff before. I think we moved the numbers around.
Not in staff aggregate.
Exactly,
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying.
It's a $2,000.
It's a $2,000
Yeah.
increase in the aggregate.
No, you got
across
two
all.
over there, the assistant library. One at 48, one at 56. And that comes up to 10,416. And you're budgeting this year for 9,555. Those two positions. I'm
Charlie,
just talking
if you
about,
look at the aggregate for the entire salaries for the library, there's only a $2,000 increase.
Yeah.
So it's across,
And that's including the 2% increase for the
Yes.
direct.
yeah,
And one position got 0 back.
Right.
There's one position there that
that's
got
what,
0
that's,
back.
that's what I was trying to understand how it, because I just got this.
So in terms of raises, people are getting a 2% raise, or
Yeah.
are there people that, is there an adjustment that's being made for?
Yeah, and I don't think anybody's gotten higher than a 2% raise ever, unless the town was doing, there have been a year or two where the town gave high, like a 3%, and then the director would get that. but the people that are working for us are paid woefully below what they are paid in their other jobs. And I think that the way we did this was to kind of try to accommodate some staffing issues and having people that have a little bit more education in place, so, yeah. That's probably where the one that got zeroed out is evening out with those other two positions.
Angela?
So you're only planning on 2785 for revenue? The bottom.
Just, it's the same as the 2019 revenue, I think we just took the same number this year as, that's what.
Yeah, for people who look at that line, and are not familiar with the history of the library, when the library was formed in 2008, we fundraised for the entire operating budget for the first year. The second year, the town kicked in a small amount of money, and then for 3 years, they kicked in about 2/3 of the operating budget. So money that was donated in those days often came from grants or people that were supporting in a different way for a different purpose than they are now. We've sort of stabilized what we are able to earn with fundraising and donations at this point. And we did actually spend a huge amount of donated money we spent 3 years raising to do the renovations. There's no cost on here for that. We recarpeted, repainted, and refurnished the library this year, all on donated money. So I would say that number, 2,700, 2,800 is probably about where we'll be with the way that we fundraise now. So those big numbers are when we were trying to get established and.
Well, I think we qualified the library qualified for more because it had less support from the town, right? And so.
Well, we were able to, it's a different kind of sell when you're
Right.
trying to operate and have people support that versus having the operating budget, and now it's for additional, things that we want to provide to the community. It's kind of a different game than we were trying to get the money for the actual operating costs.
I have a question. Not budget specifically, but it's kind of like support of it. Does the library do anything as far as metrics? How many, over the course of years, how many books have been loaned?
Yep, every month
So you have
every
all-
month the trustees receive a director's report, and we compare year over year usage. We have about, 7 or 8 different categories that we're measuring.
Okay.
We have records of that all the way back to the library opening. Software allows us to keep track of how many people have active cards. There are over 2,000 people that have library cards in our library.
Well, like meetings and number
Yeah,
of people,
so
so
every
really
month-
to
so
demonstrate the effectiveness of
If you
the
wanted to go
space.
down and ask to look, the book is behind the counter, and you're welcome to go in and look at it anytime that you want. And I think it goes all the way back to 08. I mean, they may all be in the same binder.
Yeah, I was more I think it's more of a, making people aware that it exists
Yeah.
helps justify the town's expenses on it, so it becomes relatively
Yeah, month to
obvious.
month, we have between, 10 and a dozen groups that use the library for their meetings. You were there last night, you heard the Boy Scouts in the room next door. We have, civic groups that come in, we have local businesses that use the meeting, the condo associations for all of the condos on Second Street, we actually use the library for their meetings. We had a group come in and do a senior citizens driving course this fall. There's a senior citizen social hour now, 1 day a week. All the grade school kids that are below 2nd grade walk down this morning, and they walk to the school and come and have story time. And kindergartners in our town actually get their first library card in kindergarten when they walk down with that's when you're initiated, is you walk down with the teacher and get your card. And then they leave them at the library for at the end of the year, they get to take it with them. So we're pretty integrated with a lot of the different groups and businesses in the community, but you are welcome to go and look at that information anytime you want, for sure.
Haven't you, this is part of the library's annual report?
Yeah, it's in the annual
So
report every
you
year.
So
would
that's
expect to see it, it will be there again.
It's always in the
right?
annual report, and we always do year comparison. It's all there if you wanted to look at all of it, yeah?
Thanks. Charlie?
Okay, you did some upgrading this summer, right? But then you had water damage. How much of that was damaged?
Well, you'll be happy to know that because I am in charge, Mr. Feldman begrudgingly agreed to pay for all of it. This is the 3rd time that the sewer system in the building has drains into the library.
It's the sewer system.
So, because we're on the bottom, and you know how gravity works and water. The first time it happened, it was over our bank of computers. And we had to have Servpro come in and clean it up, and luckily at the time, we had a guy out of Barrington that was actually donating Apple computers to us. He ran a private business, and he would take computers out of businesses when they were upgrading, and he would come down and kind of replace for us, so we kind of lucked out that time. The last time it happened, it was a fairly minor, but this was 2 weeks after we laid the carpet. And it came down between the main library and the community meeting room that is behind us, which is technically actually the Mills Community Room. We manage it for the building, but it belongs to Brian. So I think I don't know what the Servpro bill was, but he was gonna have his maintenance man come in with a shop vac, and I said, I'm not Servpro there cleaning up the class 3 toxic sewer water. And they came and were there for a day and a half. And then the carpet guy had literally just finished 2 weeks before, so we convinced Brian to have him come back in and replace all the carpet that had to be removed. So open studio is Saturday, the carpet guy's coming Friday. And we did invite all of the commercial people, businesses that had donated for the renovations for an event on Saturday, and it would have really been kind of in poor form to have, tarps down over the sticky concrete floor where the carpet was missing, so we're like really happy that we were able to get the carpet back in. So it should be all completed, but we did furniture, carpet, and had the space painted over the summer. Yeah. And it's really nice. For anyone who's lived through the donated items from the beginning, it's all pretty classy now, so, yeah. Yeah, and Brian paid up for all that. He paid for it, as he should. I did have a conversation with him about it, and he said it is going to happen again. So my deal with him to get him to do the carpeting immediately was, I'm going to speak to some of the plumbers in town and see if they will at least come in and look for me, kind of as a volunteer contribution, what we might be able to do on our side to mitigate when it happens. I mean, I don't know, plastic bins screwed into the ceiling or something. I mean, I'm really kind of that desperate at this point because I don't think they're gonna correct the plumbing issues. And it's a big building, and there's, I think, 9 toilets that feed into that pipe. And the mill's open on the weekends, and sometimes teenagers or kids get in there and flush things down. They vandalize the building a little bit, and I think that's been part of the issue. At least that's what he says. I don't know, it could be anything, but there's not a lot we can do about it because we can't be there controlling all 9 toilets at all times, So if anyone knows of a way to capture the toxic waste before it hits the floor.
Good, so we have more questions for library? Good.
It's Tamara, T-A-M.
Oh, sorry.
That's the easy one.
N-I-D. Z-O-L-A.
Thank you. My question is about, I know that the Friends of the Rollinsford Public Library donate a pretty decent amount every year. And I don't see that in the estimated offset revenue projections. Is that normal that it wouldn't be in there?
Do you mean for the renovations?
No, like for the museum passes, and we did the renovations this year.
The renovations are not on here because you paid the contract directly, but the $1,500 line, I think at the bottom is.
Oh, is for,
Is
includes
you- yes,
donations?
that's
Got it.
where you're included.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
And if anything else comes up and you do want a more complete or, less halting answer than I've given you tonight, Sarah would be happy to answer anything that you have to ask her.
I think the only thing was just clarifying what the bottom line is. and-
Yeah, so please ask her about that. And thanks, guys. Good night. Who's next? I'll send them.
Director?
Thank you.
bring an extra chair over.
Yes, come on.
Does anybody need copies?
Yeah, next.
Yeah. Just give me a second.
There's a few pages in there, so.
This is the Camp Raleigh. This is the Camp.
Do I have one? This looks like just.
Sounds good.
And then this is senior.
Do you have another Raleigh one?
Yes, I do.
Expense side.
That's both of them.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Okay.
All right. I'm Kelly. So we had a great summer. We had a total of 109 kids in our camp. We had 2 camps going this summer. One was Camp Raleigh for K through, you had to be entering the first grade, first through, you could be 12. So we had a lap over there, but we also had a teen camp that had 18 kids. We had a total, in Camp Raleigh was 91 kids, where we had 54 residents and 37 non-residents. And in our teen camp, we had 10 Rollinsford kids and 8 non-Rollinsford kids. So our budget for next summer is essentially, it's roughly the same. I believe we went down a couple $100 on Camp Raleigh. We had a 48,786. And we're going to 48,460. And then we have a total of the 63,577. But we have a major change that we're excited about. I believe the select board is excited about. We would like to take the money appropriated for teen camp. So we kind of made the decision not to run teen camp for next summer. Instead, we would like to use that money to fund a recreation director for the town of Rollinsford.
Part-time.
Part-time recreation director, well, yeah, with the limited funds, which I believe our budget for teen was 12,700, roughly 12,700. So, we've talked about what our group of volunteers is running 3 programs pretty much over the course of the year. The summer camp being obviously our major time commitment and expense. We are now running winter basketball right now. So we have open gyms for the month of November, 2 days a week, and that's for 3rd graders through 6th graders. And then we take those kids and decide if we're running how many teams we can put together for what they call a quote-unquote travel team. And then we have also just started senior programming, which we hope to to really make an impact. We have coffee tomorrow, if anybody's interested, 10 o'clock, down at the library. And what we're hoping that this recreation director position will do is filter a lot of the organization and programming towards one person who is now a town employee. You know, it gets a little sketchy with our group of volunteers that who's answering what questions, or that Caroline gets to filter all of our stuff as well. So we're really hoping with this rec director that it'll take over, you know, being in charge of the programming and increase programming for the people in this town and for the community. Right now, we're still in the process of figuring out where this person will fall. What we're thinking is that they will be part-time through the year and then run our summer camp. So if that's the case, we have funding in Camp Raleigh budget that will cover their salary. So the 12-7 may or may not even be needed in as much as
When you
that.
say 12-7, what is that?
It's
That's
the, yeah, that's the, it's the teen camp appropriation for 2020.
that was our expenditure.
No, I didn't think it was. Was it 13? It was roughly 13, I know that.
Yeah.
So
It's
if I gave you the
13.
wrong number.
13, 15 was what we projected as revenue for 2020.
Oh, but here, this is
That's
the
what
2020
we're spending.
appropriation.
I have 13. This is what we said we were gonna spend. That's the money we're putting out, this is the money.
Okay. There, it's roughly $13,000.
So I can clarify that a little bit, because the idea is to take whatever teen had, would fund a rec director beyond what Camp Raleigh is. So what she's saying is correct, we would like to have the same person be Camp Raleigh's director as well as the teen director. But the teen would be January through December and doing activities hopefully throughout the year, as well as doing Camp Raleigh. There is, at this point though, teen camp, taking the money proposed for teen camp used to have an income. This will not have an income, so this would be a tax not tax impact, because there will not be the revenue generated from the people who are going to teen camp.
Right.
So
yes,
just keep that in mind.
So this is a request of the town to, you know, put some money towards recreation, and I hope that we see a value in that. And certainly as our population ages, we need more activities for, you know, that age group. we've also like to use that kind of as a, hopefully, and I know school board is here, to make the school building more available for all these other events, and I think, or programming, and I think having a town employee be in charge of that, I think will make things a lot easier for the school to open their doors as opposed to one of, a volunteer running the program. So I'm really hoping that having that employee will be that kind of bridge to bridge the gap between our school building, which really needs to be used more. It really does. And it needs to be used more by our townspeople because they all pay into that building. So, that's kind of our hope, is the rec director will be offering more programming, but then being able to utilize the building more for town programs. So that's kind of our new exciting twist to your budget in front of you. So, I don't know, are there questions?
Suzanne's got a question.
Yes, thank you. So, just to get this straight, what you're considering doing is hiring a part-time recreation director,
Correct.
right? Okay.
Yes.
That would work, maybe full-time for a portion of the summer, or close to, and part-time the rest.
Right.
So I was concerned with the salary because it just doesn't seem, I know that we don't have a lot of money, but you know, it's a complaint that we hire, we're paying people under market all the time. But then if I heard correctly, that 13,000 will be supplemented by the salary that's in here under Camp Raleigh, is that correct?
Yeah.
So giving it about 18,000, will that be competitive? I mean, do you
It's
know?
part-time though.
It's part-time.
It's
Well,
part-time.
I understand, but
20 hours a week, we've talked to Elliott, and they recommend hiring somebody at $20 to $25 an hour, we talked to them in February. And at $20 an hour for 5 hours a week, for 52 weeks, we're talking less than $10,000.
right, but it becomes full-time in this.
And that's covered by the tuition, that would be covered
Oh, I
by
see
the
what you're saying.
$5,000 salary
Got it.
line in Camp Raleigh.
Okay.
So this 13,000 could easily cover, I mean, I think we figured out at one point it would be 6
Hours a week, didn't we do something with that?
It was $6,000
Yeah.
for the year. So, based on like 4 or 5 hours a week times 52 weeks a year. And that includes the summer, them working above and beyond whatever that camp salary would be that they would be getting for the summer, working full time.
But logistics is really, we're still working on
Sure.
it because the select board has to figure out, because it is part of that, part that's going to be teen is going to be a tax impact, as the other one is hopefully revenue gen, And if anything from that goes over, then it can apply to that. But at this point, we're saying that would be a budget item
Sure.
that would have to be supported by taxes.
But one possibility is that if you have a recreation director, even though that person is not a full-time person, nonetheless, you've got somebody who is really, the job is to think about things like that. So
Yes.
it's also possible the person could come up with some ideas to generate more revenue.
Absolutely.
Right,
Absolutely.
so.
Well, and I can just tell you this, I talked to Heather, she's the Elliott person, pickleball's the sport of the future right now.
Mhm.
She said that they have, their gym on Sundays is nonstop pickleball, with adults. And, that they have a program, they set a fee, and there's games all day long on Sundays. So, it definitely is a possibility, and I'd love to see that going on in our gym on the weekends, It needs to be not empty.
And if you look under the senior line, as a committee, we did talk about possibly doing a fee collection that would go towards like something just generated for the seniors, like a meal or something like that. But we haven't figured out logistically how to handle that in the budget. So a rec director could help us facilitate the collection of fees for the senior programs, like $3 for a senior meal or $5 for a senior meal, and help cover the costs to perpetuate the program.
So then the staff structure would be a rec director, a Camp Raleigh director, and an assistant director.
Maybe,
Well, we're looking for the Camp Raleigh director and the rec director to be the same person.
Yeah.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
For the
you might-
time being.
yeah,
Okay.
so that might be the same person,
It makes some sense early on,
yeah.
but if pickleball gets added and there's some successes with growing the program, then there may be reason to add staff then.
Right, so for the budget, it would be good to have one person for that, just to get off our feet here.
Other communities who have been successful with a rec director in the past have somebody who oversees, not necessarily directly hands-on, but they're there for backup for any of the programs, summer programs. One of the towns that does that is North Berwick, Maine. They have somebody who takes in all the paperwork, which currently the town is doing, and it would take, the rec director would take a lot of the burden off of the town administrator. And then they are just there to answer questions and to help out and to run the logistics during the summer, where right now we're combining the two positions.
And pardon my ignorance on this question, I should probably know it, but I don't. What are the hours, how many hours a week that is Camp Raleigh in session? I'm assuming Monday through Friday.
So it's Monday through Friday, it's 8 weeks. It runs 9 to 4 are the bulk but you can also pay extra for pre-camp, which is 7:30 to 9, and we also have a post-camp, which is 4 to 5:30.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, and that's been a big, that's actually generated a pretty good income for us, the pre and the post, so we charge extra for that.
We nearly tripled what we expected this year with the pre and post.
Northern Triumph here.
Mhm.
And the teen camp had a slightly different schedule when it was running. It was only 3 days a week. And it ran same
Same
hours,
hours, yeah.
but 3 days a week to give the teens an opportunity to go out and do more different things.
They were never on site, they were always on a trip. That's the difference.
And we
between
love
she-
teen camp, and I do wanna say, we would love to see that come back. You know, I think it's a great opportunity for our kids who are too young to work and don't have things to do besides be on their cell phones. We would love to see that come back, you know, after hopefully we get all this, you know, up and running, that, you know, we don't wanna say that that's gone forever, but, at some point in time, we'd like to bring it back. Sooner.
Another question, but first, I just wanna thank both of you, all of the rest of your committee. I know the amount of work that, you as just, as town residents are putting in to resurrected this program and to keep it going, and it's a lot of work, so thank you for that. This is a sort of a nitpicky thing on the, senior program budget, on the anticipated revenue. You've got the town allotment there as anticipated revenues. That's not customarily how we do. The anticipated revenue should be the revenue that you anticipate coming into the town. Not that the town is giving in support of that. That's gonna show up in the expense thing. So that line should just go to zero. There's no anticipated revenue right now coming in from the senior program.
Okay. So just a bottom line is 0 is all it should say, or 500 to
No,
that?
no, you're not anticipating at this, right now, any anticipated revenue. So it should be zero.
Okay.
And it should be zero all the way along from the prior years, because it was the same thing. What you're showing here is really the expense appropriation that is part of the expense budget. So that was just my small little nitpicky thing, thank you.
Just for informational purposes, how many teens participated this last year?
18,
But they sign up by the week,
yeah.
so we could have up to 20 per week, and most of them signed up for multiple weeks. We only had 2 sign up for 1 week.
Yeah, so it was a little different, it was a little different setup, just because you could do weekly, well, you can do weekly with Raleigh, but, with the younger camp, but most people there sign up for a whole summer, pretty much. But, so we had as much as 12, I think this summer we had 12 was our highest, and I think 7 was our lowest week, so.
For the teens?
Yeah,
Yeah, and they do all sorts of things, going from amusement parks to Diana's Bath, hiking, and
back to Mount Major.
hiked Mount Major, went to the seacoast beaches at the ocean, did
Take flight, a climbing course in Kittery. It's good,
indoor
it's good.
sand, indoor water parks. They went down to
Cocoa Key.
Cocoa Key in Massachusetts. They do all the local fun centers like Hilltop and what they did, or what we did when we figured out the teen budget was we broke it down so the max activity for the week would be $50. So if they went to Cocoa Key, it was we would put $50 towards that ticket, and then they would go hiking at a state park like Diana's Bath on one day, and then the Friday they would do an activity in the morning and go swimming, and you'd pay $110. So for a resident, $125 for a non-resident. So roughly half of it would go to your big trip for the week.
Transportation costs is what's tough on that. Because you got 12 kids on a bus, and it's, $250 to $300 a day for a bus. So that's the toughest thing for the expense.
Well, we won't have anything for them this summer.
No, not right now.
Charlie?
How'd you do on revenue neutral this year?
You're about $4,000 short,
Yeah, I
Charlie.
see that.
Yeah, 3,900. We had a few less campers, and I talked to Summersworth about that, they had less campers this summer too, so I'm not sure if there's a rhyme or reason to that, but we had about 10 less kids this summer in Camp Raleigh. And then we were a little over on our counselor fees. I think that's where that showed up.
Now, I notice you're going up on your rates. Is that gonna make you more closer to revenue neutral?
We hope so. We've been trying, Charlie, for four, you
I'm well
know,
aware of what you've been doing.
three
I'm not
summers we've been
criticizing
trying.
that. I know.
But what's the trend line?
Angela, please.
What's your trend line in terms of closing the gap on that revenue neutral?
Well, this summer was a little bit bigger, actually. We kind of went the wrong way this summer. Our first summer was probably 2,000. We went between 2 and 4 all 3 years. Actually, was it, about 2 and 4.
Just for general information, before the rec committee, this particular instance of the rec committee took over, the town was subsidizing recreation to the tune of over $20,000 a year. So
That's a big improvement.
it's a really big improvement. And what the backstory that didn't come up, and I might as well make it more obvious now, is that there was people who had been on the rec committee at the time just retired from it, you know, the rec director retired from it, and there was this real void, and there were a lot of new people who ran the rec program this one year, and we were very concerned about some issues with safety, with oversight, and all those kinds of things. And so we did not feel comfortable continuing the program. And so we did not, and for safety reasons, and again, there was just turnover in personnel. And Kelly came to us and says, how can you do this to us? And what you're seeing now is, so our challenge to them is we're happy to reinstate it. You have to get this thing revenue neutral, because at that point, it was late in the budget season. That money was already somewhere else. And so they have done an outstanding job in trying to make themselves be revenue neutral. And again, the budget before that, the town was fully supporting was over 20,000. So they're still to the good, even with that $13,000 salary.
So that's 16,000 less, spending 16,000 less on that budget? You were spending around 20,000 in the past and 4,000 now.
Well,
toward revenue neutrality.
Yeah, there was no attempt to be revenue neutral, and so we were just covering everything. There was incidental revenue that came in, selling hot dogs or something, but it was pretty incidental, you know.
Yeah.
So,
But basically, when we was putting 20,000 in, it was mostly just Rollinsford students. Now it's a lot of out-of-towners.
It was only 9 to 3 too,
Yeah, I know.
yeah. And people, we went home for lunch, so.
Now, to defend you,
Yeah,
you're doing a
yeah.
hell of a good job.
Yeah.
But see, the problem is, they're putting a budget now, and they don't even know if they've got a kid this summer.
Sure, you had a question?
Yeah, just, so you mentioned the teen stuff, you have a different rate for out of towns, which I think is great. Is that true also for the
Yeah.
kids? Of-
Yeah, so we charge more.
So,
There's, for Rollins, for instance, Rollinsford, camper and we're really low. I mean, compared to any other towns for what we offer. We're charging one Rollinsford person $350 for the summer, that's all 8 weeks. And, out of town is $470. So it's a $120 difference. And we do need to have a discussion about rates and, out-of-town rates and things like that. So we are gonna go up a little bit. We're hoping, we don't wanna price people out, in Rollinsford. It's pretty important.
Well,
But-
definitely on the Rollinsford side,
Yeah.
but I mean,
But we
it's
can
almost
definitely
like-
go up in the
yeah.
out-of-town, which I
It's
think
almost
is
like-
what we're gonna do. But we had we had pretty good revenue from out-of-towners, so, it's kinda.
Yeah, right. So, on our numbers, we had 65 roughly Rollinsford campers and 45 out-of-town campers. But our out-of-town campers pay the bulk of the before and after care. fees, which are additional fees into our pockets. Because their parents can't get here as quickly as the Wallingford residents. So that adds a bonus to us, and like, on a weekly basis, if you, like, I do mine on a weekly basis, my children, because we're gone to different places all throughout the summer. So it's $50 to $70 for a Wallingford resident, $70 for all 5 days, $50 for the week of the 4th of July. And then it's $20 more per week
Per week, yeah, it's
for
90 for
an
a
out-of-town resident.
90, so you can choose which way to pay too. You can choose weeks also, or do a full summer.
And we had probably 20 to 30 families due by the week. And some of them didn't realize that you pay for all 8 weeks. You're paying for 5 weeks basically, and you're getting the other 3 free. So they're paying for 6, 7 weeks at the weekly rate and giving us more money.
Any other questions for Rec?
Yeah, it's only a small thing, but first aid, CPR, and background, there's 300 in it this year for both of them. You didn't spend it and you're putting it back in.
We had a number of our counselors who were already certified, so they did not have to go through that training.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But we did have a lot of,
yeah.
record checks. So where is that showing?
Executive.
Oh, it's on our budget. Yeah, we had a lot.
Okay.
Anybody over 18, we have to do it.
Yeah, 18 and over.
The other thing is that since we were not as close as we've been in the past, the last couple of years, when we did the budget, we just tried to keep it as close to as last year's, so that then we could hopefully find our mistakes, correct them, and move forward to become revenue neutral.
Any other questions?
Good job.
All right, thanks very much, guys.
Thank you. Pickleball, it's for the future.
Another place, pickleball.
I play it out in California with my friends when I go out there, it's so fun.
I didn't realize they were doing
I do have done it here again.
I don't know if it's directed to them.
Yeah.
Can you hold on
Kelly,
just a sec,
yes.
Kelly?
Well,
I'm sorry, what?
This may be a question for the board, I don't know. So the section is called Parks and Recreation. You've talked about our 3 lines of that, summer day camp, summer teen camp, which will be the director, and senior programs. But there is Salmon Falls Family Fun Day and Winter Rec,
It's on the next page.
Winter Rec basketball.
Yeah, Winter Rec is really part of the program, but they're not changing it. It's still just the basketball program that they were doing every year.
And
And
the
Salmon Falls Family Fun Day is myself,
Yeah.
and we're still
The
with
fireworks.
President's Fireworks. That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You moving?
Okay, so I want to make sure that Caroline will be able to speak tonight.
Yes, please.
I don't think we need a motion for her
I don't, I
to
think we should
present.
just cross the board every year to allow it, so.
Just a couple of housekeeping measures. You have a new copy of the operating budget. It has expenses through the end of October. The previous version was only through September. So that gives you a little bit more information when you deliberate. Also, the revenue report that you have, when we get to that, does not have, please ignore the capital items section because the board has not decided on capital items. And also, back to the operating budget, the select board did vote on the default budget, which is their discretionary budget, and it, you know, by all means, if you have questions that you want to raise for Denise or myself about the default budget now or at another meeting, that's fine, but it's not subject to change by the budget committee the way the operating budget is. So if you have any questions about that, I'm happy to answer questions about that.
For keeping one, so do I not have to write, if mine says year-to-date through 9/30, I don't have it correct?
Right, you want you want a new version. There is a newer version, which has another,
Also says 9/30.
it should
I
not
mean, I
say.
printed this out today, that's why I'm,
You have the date on it, not just one.
Well, no, it says year-to-date expenditures, and the year-to-date is through 9/30.
Oh, did you not change your header?
Nuh-uh.
Well, is there a
Yeah,
figure we
that's-
can use to kind of
that's
just
all
time,
it is.
just to make sure that we're looking at?
Yes, I will, oh, look at that, I'm looking at 9:32, let me look at.
Yeah, it doesn't look
I mean,
like.
Okay,
just a
so,
header, that's fine.
I'll go back and see, stand by on that. The short answer is, I know that those figures exist through the end of October, but the report I have in front of me also says 9:30, so I don't have anything to tie you into right now. But I will go back and look through that email and make sure I get you a stay tuned to your email, I'll get you October.
So
Money.
this is likely not through 10:30.
It is likely not, because the header was changed when it was changed.
Okay.
But it's
Yeah,
just
and I
like
don't
the
think
last
it has,
couple
because when you
Yes,
look
they
at
do.
the total.
Basically, the numbers
it's
are pretty much the same.
Yeah, it's exactly.
The default budget has changed
All
a
right.
little.
So is the proposed 2020 proposal correct, right?
Yeah.
Our proposals? Because we didn't do any changing on that.
Correct, the bottom line of the 2020 proposed is correct. So I apologize for that, setting false expectations there. But I will follow through and get you better numbers.
Okay, so, we're gonna kind of bounce off of each other, but, bottom line is, well, some of the stuff you've heard already from the town clerk and from the police department and the fire department, we're really gonna talk about our portion of it, but some of it is contained within that, like, executive contains some of that. So, where the moderator and the supervisor of the checklist, that the increases are due to the additional, elections. And then, the telephone line, is increasing, and we're asking for an additional cell phone for welfare use, because we don't, lots of times people are trying to call, and we don't believe that we should have our employees give out their cell phone number for residents to call looking for them. So we're asking for, we're talking about a track phone, right?
It's a track phone.
And just for the use for the welfare department, and have it on there if someone needs to give a follow back up to us. So that
Well-
would be in Caroline's.
But also, we're actually required, according to RSA 165, that governs welfare, to be available between regular business hours that approximate 8 to 4:30 or 9 to 5 or something like that, when we would be consistently available to the town, to the residents or people who might have a public assistance need. And so this track phone would be a way to accommodate that without having the doors open to the public, which is a security risk. Or if, there's a meeting going on, or if I'm on vacation or something like that, it's just a way to have the availability we're supposed to have without changing town hall hours.
And then, under the contingency, we use 1% over the prior year operating budget. So that's where we are on the executive total. Is there any
I got a
questions?
couple questions, yeah.
I'm sorry?
Emily?
Yeah, did you guys look into it all? I know there are services that forward, so if you have a phone number, it'll forward to whatever cell phone you want to put it out to, and it does not show the real phone that it's going to.
And can you call back on your personal cell phone and it doesn't show your
I
cell phone number?
think so, but I'm not 100% sure on that part.
But
I think there are free services, just.
Yeah, we just want to make sure that
Yeah.
replying back would not give any indication. Is that
We're also
true?
talking about a burner phone that's gonna
Yeah.
cost about, what?
I budgeted
$20 a month.
$200 a
Right,
year.
well, you get a
Yeah,
year
so it's
plan
really
and,
small.
yeah,
But
it's
then
really
you
small
also have to
dollar
keep track
amount.
of a second
Yeah.
phone.
That's true, yeah.
Right, and that is something,
But it's better
for
to
sure.
be safe than,
Having had a husband in that position before, I know how that can go.
Mhm.
Fair enough. Suzanne?
Yes, I'm hoping that either Caroline or Denise can orient me to the narrative, which I
Okay.
appreciated receiving, and this. Are these the same?
Do you mind if I back
Go
up
ahead,
a bit
please,
and
go ahead.
do that? I have copies, should any of you have not printed copies. This is what I gave to the select board, and like the other department heads, they took that into consideration and made their own decisions. So it doesn't reflect exactly what's in this select board approved budget because they've gone through their deliberations. And if I could have one copy of that back, thank you. Because I gave it away, but one could come back
You have
maybe to Emily.
Will we be able to identify the things that?
Yes,
Oh,
yes, I'm gonna help you
You're
make
welcome.
this really logical and black and white for you.
Perfect.
So this is a lot of verbiage that basically is my assessment of the needs with regards to town administration, land use, and welfare as I see them. But I did what, the best I could to project out a multi-year plan or a big picture assessment, while at the same time providing where I thought we should start for year one and then continue with year two and year three. And I'll continue to do this every year, but in this narrative, I talk about strategic governance, which is this concept, but to a greater degree, with a data-based approach in sort of tackling a problem and outcomes and outputs, and how do you address multi-year plans throughout departments to come, so that departments can better assess, you know, if you have a speed problem, then what is the solution to that, and what does that cost, and when does it happen, and that these department level multi-year plans can filter to the select board that can then do their own strategic planning session based on the multi-year plans the department heads. And so I'm working on that concept with them, but one of the things that I've mentioned in this narrative is the concept of strategic governance. It is on the second page. There is a website there for a company that does it. I'm hopeful that the Select Board and Budget Committee will one day host a meeting of this company to explain the benefits. This company comes in and trains all the department heads and the Select Board and myself about how to carry this out, and of course there's a cost to that. But it has really helped communities who have been stuck in default budgets for a number of years, and of course we would hope to avoid that rather than be that. But it's just making better decisions, better database decisions. So that's one of the broad level principles that I'm suggesting for the town, but I also tried to implement in this proposal. So one of the other bigger, so that is not reflected in this 2020 proposal at all. So we can leave that alone for now, but so the other higher level expensive assessment in this proposal is on the first page, and that's the idea of digitization, which is that we have a multifaceted problem, which is that we're running out of space. Information is in paper form, which is a mess and hard to access, and paper costs money to print and file and manage and find. And so digitization is a way to provide better information to the public, but also for us to be able to make better decisions based on information we know we have but can't find. So there are links there to proposals. This is another thing that I would hope the Select Board and Budget Committee can have a host meeting to invite Rico to explain the proposal and the benefits, and they have the data so that we can understand the benefit better rather than just looking at the numbers and freaking out, because that is for sure the first thing that happens. And that will be broken down over years by function. So,
Is there anything in this current year's budget?
so there is nothing in 2020 about this. I'm just bringing it to everybody's attention because it's important, it's going to be expensive, it will be incremental, but it's not this year. So aside from that, my basic assessment, I'm pointing out that we don't have a facilities director, which is proving to be more problematic with not just this building but other buildings, that we don't have proper maintenance schedules, we don't know exactly what's going on with the buildings and know what they need for repairs and when they need those repairs. We don't have employees who are trained to know those things. So with that being said, there's one last thing in the general assessment, and that is the master plan, which is also not budgeted for 2020, but an important topic to be aware of, which is that our master plan is out of date. It's an important land use document which ties into most boards and committees in the town. Everybody and every body, when they make decisions, should be making decisions with consideration to the master plan. And the master plan is something that's developed through a very interactive process, engaging with the public to find out what do you want to see Rollinsford be in 10 years? Do you want it to look the same? Should we change to have more industrial uses? Should we cater more to senior housing because we have a elevated senior population or whatever the case may be, but how do we reflect the goals and values of the residents in this document that all the boards and committees will then consider when they make decisions. So we're required to have this document by law in a minimal way. We can certainly have extra chapters, but there's a minimal standard that we have to meet. So that's just something to be aware of, but it's not for 2020. So with that said, we can go to page 3. The bottom of page 3 is 2020. Those are, I don't want to skip the big picture because it's easy to not want to read lots of boring text. So of all that, some of these things have already been accomplished. I'm going to start with the bullet points. The property assessment cards, that was a really important request I've been making of the board for a number of years, and the board 2 or 3 years ago, tried to accommodate that through MapGeo, which is a wonderful interactive program that provides assessing data online, but it does not provide the complete level of data that the people who are looking for that data are looking for. So, not to say that it's completely useless, because it's really interesting and it's still out there, but we have stopped subscribing to it because the purpose of it was to reduce foot traffic in my office for appraisers and real estate agents and insurance adjusters who wanted property assessment cards, because there was a lot of volume of that and it was a constant interruption. And then of course, there's the carbon footprint for people who would come often from far away to get that information, or else ask that we email it or something, which is just time intensive. So the board graciously provided that this year, so I'm asking that be continued to be offered in the budget. Now we have switched to Avatar, which is our assessing firm. Our full actual assessment cards are now available online, and that's been for about a month now, and it's been a tremendous difference in foot traffic and questions about, I'm looking for a property card and I think I see it, but I'm not seeing the data, and am I looking at it wrong? And there were a bunch of confusing, consistent confused questions like that. So that is a continued request that is in the IT services line in the executive. It's the green line, line 17.
So that's an annual license.
That is an annual license fee, yes. So the second bullet point is the bookkeeper position, which is new to this year. He was hired in June. The position was created for 20 hours a week. It was not really known, and it's still not really known, the potential for that position. My goal with the select board in having that position created was to have that person be the point person for some of the most basic phone calls, which include, to a large degree, property questions. Questions about, can I do certain things to my property? As much as we can afford, so let's back up a minute. So when we created this position, we did it at a relatively minimal cost, $16 an hour, which is not horrible, but it's not market rate for that position. It was done because the town administrator position was created at the same time. So it was a heavy lift for administrative cost in 1 year to create both the town administrator position and bookkeeper position. But also, with regard to the bookkeeper, without knowing if you've got a good fit and what the qualities of the person actually are after a probationary period, you don't want to necessarily, so part of it's budgetary, but also we didn't know who we were going to get and what the quality of that person is. So now knowing who we have and that he's excellent and he's learned a lot and he continues to learn a lot and he's very interested and dedicated to his job, and he also has really black and white ethics, which I really appreciate and was important in my office, and I was concerned about that. And so that's where this proposal comes from, in increasing his hours by 5 per week, but also increasing his rate to $18.50, which is a, maybe second quartile market rate for that position. So,
What's the total hours per week?
so it would move it from 20 to 25 hours a week.
What line
So this is, it's a compiled line, number 6, admin support personnel. That line is a combination of myself and the bookkeeper position and Salome Perry, who takes minutes for the board and also works maybe 5 to 6 hours a week in my office and works on the newsletter that goes out with the property taxes. She does some other things outside of those few hours, but, so she's in there, and the bookkeeper and myself.
Do you have a breakdown of that?
I can certainly provide it if the body wants to provide it, but I can tell you what it's comprised of, which is, so it's a 2% increase for that board secretary, and it is now, the select board settled on $17.70 for the bookkeeper position from what I requested, and also 5 additional hours for his position to 25 hours.
I can do that.
That line also includes, we'll jump down to a different bullet point, but I have requested a $5,000 increase to my salary, which the board has supported in that line. I'm asking for that for similar reasons with the bookkeeper position, that the position was new. When a position is new, especially when there are other things going on, it's kind of too much to do it all at once to the level that you would want to do it. And also, the job description is heavy as it's written now, but we all kind of acknowledged in the beginning that we're not really sure how much of this is realistic. So $5,000 I'm asking for because we have adopted, the board has adopted a new policy regarding its implementation of policies, and they're getting much more aggressive about that, where in theory every third meeting they are approving a new policy, which requires me to select and revise policies to propose to them. And as we review those policies, the goal is to evaluate what my role might be with regard to those policies, which is increasing, but also to bring it up more to market and what I think it should have been to begin with, that just wasn't really possible when we were doing so much all at once last year. The board is also talking about, there's kind of a consensus on the board about adding more direct reports to me as well. So that's what that line 6 is comprised of.
Okay, now, is the bookkeeper figured for a year or for?
Can we just do this a little more orderly and ask, because Emily's also raising her hand, so let's take turns if we could.
No problem, I got a problem with that.
Emily?
Who are your current record books?
I have the bookkeeper, the building janitor, I have Tom Clark, code enforcement, I have all the minute takers, and I have the assessing contract and IT.
Okay, I just wonder what you estimated the bookkeeper for a year.
It's in this,
At the 1770? Yeah, I got your estimate.
yeah, it's in there, 7410, it's the second bullet point.
Oh,
So that, but to be clear, that's my proposal, that's not what's reflected in the line, because the board did about half
Yeah,
of
they
that.
did 1770, right?
For an hourly
Yeah,
wage
but
of
was that
2.5.
based on 24 hours for the whole, 25 hours for the year?
No, well, no,
Or for
22
9
and a
months.
half hours per week for the year.
How many?
22 and a half hours per week,
2.5 hours a week increase.
yes.
Okay, she
So
went.
you asked for a 5-hour
22 and a half.
increase, but got 2.5 hours increase. Is that
Yes.
right?
Okay.
And you
Yes.
asked for 1850
50
and
and
got
1770.
1770.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay. Go ahead.
So my question is, so the town administrator's salary is going from what to what?
From 60 to 65.
And what's represented in line 6 then, the 89,515, is the 22 and a half hours at 17 something, your
65.
You're 65.
And
then
the
2%
minute rate, yeah, 2% for the,
okay.
that other part, yeah. Okay. we already discussed the burner for the burner phone for the welfare department. That is a $200 value. That is reflected in the budget. Then there's this other land use administrator change for $200. I proposed and the select board agreed to change how we provide land use consulting for the planning board, and the zoning board for that matter. We had someone for many years serve on the planning board in advisory, non-voting capacity, and there were things about that that could be improved upon. And so Tom Clark, who is in the office on Mondays on a very part-time basis, he sits in the city manager's position on the planning board for Dover and has for a number of years. And they receive a lot more volume of cases of all sorts than we have. And so he has extensive planning experience that way and through code enforcement. But there was also the added benefit of having him in the office so that I could ask him questions and he was more accessible. So I coupled that with a resident in town who is an AICP certified planner who works for the city of Rochester, who is also a master's in public administration. And she is now providing the technical reviews at home prior to meetings, conferring with Tom Clark, and Tom Clark is serving in that advisory capacity at meetings. So I believe we're getting sort of the double benefit of two eyes on cases. The planning board is challenged by being kind of always green because we're all just residents and we don't have any professional experience in this, and the planning board doesn't see enough cases that we can really gain experience in a way that we feel comfortable like we have our own professional knowledge base. So now we have, I believe, better support for a difference of $200. So I took the
Total for those changes that you?
yes. Thank you.
So $200 for the year, we're talking about.
$200 for the year. So I have moved money from the planning consultant line to Tom Clark's salary line. And we are, and the difference is $200 between what they were and what they are, and we're covered. And we have the added bonus of having Tom Clark now serve on the Zoning Board of Appeals in an advisory capacity, so that the zoning board also being a group of residents with no professional experience and they're fairly new. These are really technical boards, and there's a number of things that are really technical and complicated about any individual case, and they're all different. And so they got hung up on some procedural things in recent cases, but now they'll have a technical advisor who will not necessarily comment about you should or shouldn't do this, but here are the procedural aspects, this is what you should be considering and should be thinking about, and no, zoning doesn't apply, or yes, zoning really should apply, and like that. So that's what that's about. So that has already taken place.
Quick question, Caroline, the town resident you mentioned who's helping Tom Clark, is that somebody who's being compensated, or is that somebody that's just helping out?
No, she is being compensated, much the same way as the previous person was being compensated. So we've got two people now being compensated for a combined total of 200 more than what was happening before.
And her role is represented financially or budgetarily in line 67, is that correct? That
The planning consultant.
planning consulting, so that's how that's what she's getting paid.
Yes, so I took some of that money and I moved it to Tom Clark's salary line. The last bullet point on that page is not the last bullet point, but the select board is still struggling with the town's question about what to do with the police department, which is connected with what to do with this building. And it's really hard to answer that question because we still don't know what the needs of this building might be. So it plays into the idea of a facilities director, but also there are some things that, probably require engineering and somebody to tell us to do an asbestos test and some things like that. So I have tried to get a quote for an actual assessment of this building. I've been unable to do that, but I've been talking to the school's facility director who we kind of mutually agreed that although it's a shot in the dark, the school paid $30,000 for their assessment a few years ago. And while that's a bigger building, it was a few years ago, maybe that's sort of kind of a right number. So the select board so far is on board with that idea, though there haven't been any official votes on that. On the back page here, we spoke about my salary adjustment. The last thing that I have added to this budget, which the board has supported, is something for dental benefits. What is in the budget is not what is in my narrative here. What is in my narrative would be for the town to offer dental in the same cost-sharing structure that the employees currently enjoy. And when the select board was struggling to make cuts from all the proposals to make this budget equal what they thought would be a reasonable bottom line, they decided instead to offer it at a 50-50 cost share. So this has been something that the employees have wanted for a number of years, but it still continues to not be happening because there is a law that is not, there's some kind of insurance statute that is not from our provider, but there's a bigger rule that says that 3/4 of those who are eligible for a benefit, a healthcare benefit, which includes dental, would have to choose to take the benefit for the town to offer it at all. So we have 8 full-time employees, 6 would have to take it, and so far we haven't been able to get 6 to take it. So this proposal is the best proposal that's been offered yet financially for the employee, but it's not clear at this point whether or not we have the 6 people, and the board may be trying to restructure this in another way, or it may die. I'm not really sure what's gonna happen with this proposal. We have not had 6 people respond favorably that they will. We have people who are on spousal plans, so we have to compete with whatever they're getting from the spouse, and we haven't seemed to have hit that yet, or at least I don't know that we have.
Mr. Chairman, we're not at the point right now where we're gonna offer our own comments about things, right? We're just kind of trying to understand, so our
Right, I think-
deliberation is coming.
That's correct. This is more informational. If there's questions to clarify what we have in front of us, or we need some additional information, that's what today is for.
So, I encourage you all to read the narrative. I went over what I've proposed for this year, but I encourage you to learn more about what's not in this year and what's in the overall big picture. I did outline that, congruent with the rest of your previous conversations with department heads, that there are some people that are really underpaid, and the minute takers are among them. We've had trouble finding minute takers, and minute takers make $10, $11, $12 an hour for jobs that we know are getting posted elsewhere for $16 to $18 an hour. So I proposed that minimally they should reach $14 an hour. The minute taker who takes care of planning and zoning, that's a particularly technical job, and she does more than just take minutes. But because land use is very technical and you're subject, you have to maintain property rights for a developer or for somebody who wants to do something with their land, but at the same time you have to protect the public interest, and that can be contentious, which is why the minute taker position is extremely important. And she does it well, and she has a lot of knowledge, and she does other things outside of taking minutes, like posting notices and scheduling ZBA meetings and researching, better forms and more fee structures and such like that. So I would like her, so I'm proposing a different increase for her and title change with her. But the mea culpa of all this is that I did not include that in this budget, so we'll see how that works out. So that is, I think I've pretty much gone over what has been taken from the narrative and how it's been interpreted into the budget worksheet. I think you've already been told that there are 4 elections, so anything related to elections, the moderator and supervisors and such, are just a function of how many elections there are.
Question on that. Okay, on the default budget, you leveled it at 60 and 180 on the moderator and supervisor, shouldn't that be the number of elections?
The default budget is calculated by the previous year's budget
Yes.
plus any contractual obligations minus any one-time expenses. It's as vague as that and open to interpretation. Like, what does that really mean? I don't think we can say we have do we have a contractual obligation to, I suppose there's a good argument that we do. I would have to take that back to the select board and see what they say about changing the default budget to reflect the number of elections.
Well, you did that on line 29, the stipend for the clerk. You moved that one up to the,
That's a good point. Good catch.
Suzanne?
I'm just curious, does the budget committee, what is the budget committee's relationship to the default budget? Do we
she
have any
asked if we
say-
had any information on it.
Do we
when
have
she
any
started.
say, do we have any say in the default budget?
No,
But we,
but if you find an error, that's certainly welcome to be discussed.
But we don't approve
We're not
it, we
gonna
don't.
approve it.
No,
No,
you're approving
no,
it, but he's
that's-
just asking a question of why we,
Yeah.
why we did what
I'm
we
sure the
did.
select board would welcome the comment and a chance to
Absolutely.
review that.
But I think I think he's probably right, I think we're obligated to do that because we have to do it because there's an election, so it's almost
And
like a
they're due
contract with them that they have to be there. So
I think that's
I would
fair.
agree that it has to be the same, and we can bring it back up at the next meeting.
Yeah.
So,
You have a question?
well, I'm just
Angela?
looking at voting booth line 39, nothing is included on voting booth, but there will be.
Well, no, voting booth is buying a new voting booth.
Oh, so we have them.
Yeah,
We're good this year,
yeah.
we added some last year.
Yeah, yeah, so
Early
that's
before.
not a person.
Okay.
Okay, so are we all set on the executive side of it, everyone? Okay, so,
I
yep.
guess the one question is, when we're talking, we're gonna be talking about salaries, I think a lot, when we're deliberating across the board. Do we have information about, sort of backup information about what the note taker salaries are typically in the area, or what salaries are for town administrators, so that we have some perspective? Is there, like the chief gave, a survey of chief salaries to us to give us perspective and who's asking for it. Do we have something like that?
That would be good to have. The short answer is no, we don't have it. The municipal association used to compile that data and they no longer do because towns don't supply it. So it requires somebody's time in calling all these people and saying, what do you provide and what do you do? So not to say that it's out of the question, but no, we don't. The town administrator position, I have a little bit more information. I can tell you that as of a year ago, towns between 15,000 and 3,000 in population had a mean wage of 67.5 approximately. But I don't think if there was any, Stratford County was not well represented in that survey. There were a lot of people that didn't respond to that. That's about all I can say about that. I pay attention to the job postings.
But there's not, I was wondering if
there's
the
not a
municipal association
database.
had some kind of a,
They used to have a wonderful
Publication.
book
Yeah.
that they submitted every year with all of, but again, it's, if the cities and towns don't reply,
Yeah.
if they don't reply with their dollar amounts, it's kind of useless, and I think maybe that might be one of the reasons why they stopped doing it. But I used to give comparisons of, towns your size and be able to see what others are making. But, if people have recommendations, that it's pretty much, you're researching it and doing it and coming back with a reasonable, recommendation, because we just don't have the staff time to do it.
okay, thank you.
So I have a question.
I'm sorry.
I think it's called, do you have access to a listserv for town administrators?
Yes, and someone asked about a year ago about town administrative salaries, which is where that information came from that I just said. That was, 9 months or a year ago that somebody asked and then, did the good grace of compiling it all in a spreadsheet and sharing it with everybody.
Could you put the question out on the listserv about what minute takers, in a town our size? I mean, it's gotta be relative to.
I don't know what, a minute taker is a minute taker, right? I mean,
Us as a
why would you
minute
pay
size?
less?
Well, you asked about, so I'm responding to the question.
Yeah, No, I
and
think,
some related information.
Yeah.
But I think a minute taker is a minute taker. I mean, it doesn't matter what size your town or city is.
Oh,
You're
I
doing-
definitely
That's what
want
we're
to
saying,
say.
it's like,
Yeah.
they are doing the same job
Yeah.
as the city of Dover's doing. I mean, it
it's
is,
an hourly thing.
it's an hourly thing, yeah.
Okay.
Isn't there information on, at the state level, the State Department of Labor, that would give you, general administrative, you want to do a common sense comparison, I think, about a certain job type? Would that be helpful?
Just things that help, it helps support decision making for us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, as well.
We're data deficient, and that's one of the reasons why I really want to incrementally work on increasing administrative support time, because it gives us all better information when we can have time to find data. That there's a lot that we're not doing because we don't have time to do, and we can better serve ourselves and the public if we can have the time to do things into better detail and find corroborating evidence like you're saying.
And I'm certainly not asking for extensive amounts of time spent on this. I don't think it's worth the,
Fair enough.
a grid kind of like, here's 80 town comparison, but just to get some idea from like a half dozen people on a listserv might help.
I can search the job postings too, because they're there too.
Suzanne?
Yeah, I'm curious about lines 18 and 19, professional services and stormwater management. What are the plans for professional services this year? And I guess you don't include stormwater, but stormwater is separate, right?
That's a really good question, and there's not much of an answer for that, because the board has been struggling to meet and get the budget decided and, do what they have been doing. There is a calculator, as you know, to determine what is in that professional services line. It takes care of primarily engineering services and legal expenses. There is nothing specifically designated that the board has done any kind of strategic planning session to decide it wants to tackle. They've had some anecdotal conversations about concepts. One of them is that we know that, it is likely that we're gonna need an engineer to help us determine what is causing sinkholes near the Legion, which is relative to a water problem going on behind the Legion, which caused Foundry Street to wash out last winter, and probably a pipe from behind the Legion to storm drain to the river through the ball field will need to get replaced, which is gonna need engineering services. So that's one thing that I would anticipate would come out of that line, and or the culvert reserve fund might be able to help with that. As far as legal expenses are concerned, we're still trying to work on our cable franchise agreement, which is in legal review. Our welfare policy has not been through legal review, and other policies may need legal review as well, including parts of, our insurance companies advised us that we ought to have some policies of the recreation department passed through legal before we embark on a new summer with the recreation program. And that in addition to code issues. There are a number of code violations that we're aware of that are just not very easy to budget for. You don't know how cooperative people are gonna be with bringing their property up to code. So that's a general answer. I don't have a
I get that, I
specific.
appreciate that. So the stormwater management line is,
We are in year 2 of our stormwater permit. It's level funded because we don't have, with regard to the stormwater permit, we are required to do a number of things that are complicated and in flux, and that's frustrating. But basically, although the permit's in black and white, we have a coalition of DPW workers, engineers, and state level people from the region of all the stormwater communities in the region, trying to figure out how do we implement our obligations with regard to the stormwater permit. And so we don't know exactly what we're doing is what I'm trying to say. We hope that $5,000 will cover it. It likely will because it did last year, but yet at the same time, we're always each successive year, we're required to do more. So we're required to do public outreach and record metrics about how effective that outreach may or may not have been. Also public engagement, which is different, and perhaps even purchasing incentives for people to engage with us and talk about stormwater. We're required now, at least for this year, to do a second run of street sweeping to collect data for how much we're, basically to collect data that justifies not doing it twice a year forevermore. So those are the general things that the stormwater line is for, but we really don't, postage for messaging and, bonuses to incentivize people to engage is the short answer of what that's for.
And it sounds like we're still participating in Seacoast Stormwater.
Yes. Though,
Who attends it?
Thanks to Paul.
Paul Cazalt is,
God bless him.
he's amazing,
Yeah.
and I haven't said this to the select board, but he deserves a stipend. He deserves some kind of,
He certainly deserves recognition. He at least.
something, because he puts in countless hours, month to month, that we don't even see.
That most communities hire companies like mine to do.
Very-
Yes,
very
he's an
expensive.
engineer, and we're just very lucky that we have an engineer who's retired and has taken this upon himself, and he goes to these meetings where there are no volunteers. These are full-time municipal employees whose job it is to figure this out. And, here's Rollinsford, that Rollinsford's got a volunteer, and so I'm attempting to go. I'm struggling to go because there are so many other things going on. So he and I kind of share that.
And at the very least, he just deserves to be recognized at every opportunity.
Indeed.
Thank you.
Okay, can
We're
we
next
move
one?
on? Yes, let's go. All right, so,
Did we get through elections already, or are we still?
well, we kind of talked about it with the, if you guys have any questions on the elections and registrations and the salaries proposed, and I'll take them, but, no? All right.
So for just a clarification again, so it's line 29, this is the line that last week we heard the town clerk say we should, she is recommending that it be $500 per election, right?
Correct.
Thank you.
So the financial administration, the tax collector is at 2%. The audit is, it's approximately a $400 increase, and the treasurer is a elected position. Any questions on that? Okay. Kind of reevaluation. It went up because we didn't get the budget in time, correct, for last year on the appraisal?
Right, so the board just signed a new contract, but last year the budget was flatlined from the year before because they had not yet received the contract. So we're 2 contracts later as far as this budget number goes.
Oh, budgeting, yeah. Any questions for that? Okay. Personnel, administration, health insurance is reflected, that we removed some plans that weren't, allocated money that didn't have to go to a plan, and so that's why that reduction is there.
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
Well, we had some projections of what we thought was gonna happen last year, they didn't, so we're removing it.
We had a number of vacant positions,
Right.
and so we over budgeted for the types of plans that those new employees might select.
We didn't know if they were gonna be family,
But
single.
in fact, if there are staffing changes throughout the course of the year, that number could scoot right back up. Is that-
Potentially.
potentially.
So the premium cost itself went up 7.5%. So that's,
We're basing it on what we have now, though, what we're,
right, so they're based on the actual plans. So that's about $200 to $400 per non-single employee annually. Just, from an employee standpoint.
So I wonder if the board, and I'm just saying this, I'm not recommending whatever, I'm just kind of throwing it out, if the board would consider like a reserve fund to sort of fund these, it could be large swings in both health insurance and also termination pay for,
Yeah,
you know, with a cap so that,
yeah.
because otherwise you're kind of building it or not building it into the budget and maybe coming short, but do you see what I mean?
Isn't that, does the school do that? Yeah, they do, yeah. I mean, I think that's something that we should think about.
You have line 63 though, which is there for that purpose, which may or may not be enough.
Well,
Right, but it's in the budget every year.
Right,
So if you were putting, let's say, that amount into a budget, into a reserve fund, but you know you were gonna cap it at, let's say, I'm just gonna say 10,000. Well, then if you don't use it that third year, it's no longer in the budget, so it just,
that is a
that's what
great
you were
idea.
doing as well,
To be
right?
clear, not for healthcare costs, we do that for special ed costs because they can swing so much.
So you don't have one for healthcare? Oh, okay.
But I'm aware.
No, you probably don't. I just thought it sounded familiar, but, yeah.
We may or may not be able to do that, but I looked into it.
just curious.
So, okay, that's all on that, planning and zoning, of course, all of the positions are 2%, reduction, Caroline explained to you on line 67, moving the money to, Tom Clark's position, and so that's why you're seeing a decrease in that line.
Where does Tom Clark appear? I forget.
Tom Clark
He is down past, between police and fire, I think.
Oh, I see, yeah.
All right, government buildings,
One second. Okay, line 71, advertisement. We overspent last year and you level funded it for this year?
well, this is for planning, not
Yes.
for us, okay.
You can never predict what's
No,
gonna
I-
come through, so, you know, we got a major subdivision this year, there's, you know, it's also for zoning too. It's been a busy year, you know, the trend before that, we haven't been overexpending, so, you know,
I see what
There's-
you're saying, yep.
yeah.
Alrighty, so government buildings, supplies in town hall went down 1,000. Do you want,
So that was because we had budgeted to replace the chairs you're sitting on, and that was a
Okay.
one-time expense.
yes, you're
So-
welcome.
That was brought back down.
And then, we don't have, I'm a little concerned because we don't have a number for sewer and water, so I am a little concerned about that.
You mean the town's fee?
Yeah,
That's true.
well, the town-wide fee, that might be going up.
For everybody, but-
Yeah, but it's not reflected in anything here. We probably should increase the heat because it's very cold in here. Just saying. Need to talk to the board of selectmen. But, no, it's okay, I'm about to sweat. Electricity, we are happy to report that the fire station, the transfer station, and the highway bond has completed their conversion to LED. So we are expecting to have some decreasing in our costs, so that's a good thing. And we paid it out of our budget, of this year's budget. So we did not take the loan program, we paid it up front. So let's hope that it says what they said it's gonna do and we start seeing some savings. I went into the fire station yesterday and you can't even believe how much brighter it is. So they're very happy about it too. I haven't been down to the transfer station, but
And that was a 50-50 cost share with state emergency program.
so our hope is to do the town hall and police station. We're looking at our budget to see if we can fit it in this year and obligate it, and then if not, we will do it, in this budget. So, heat, I think it was based on what they spent the last, that's why we're kind of like.
There wasn't any
Small
reason to
little-
believe it would go up
Right.
necessarily. We have scheduled to have the windows in the town hall repaired, which we hope will mean that they will close properly. So there should be heat savings, we think, but without a year of data, we don't really know, but we should be warmer anyway.
Is that, are those repairs reflected in line 91, is that?
No, it's supposed to be in this year's
No,
budget.
that's gonna be in this year's budget,
Oh,
so
I see.
that's
We already
already
have,
happening.
but
Right.
I don't know why he hasn't come yet.
We've just been having scheduling problems, and then he came and he had the wrong part, so we had to order the parts, and he had
Is
to
it all of this floor?
all of this floor.
Yeah.
And one or two downstairs.
Because I mean, if there's gaps in them that they don't even close completely,
So with the heat in the town hall, the select board had proposed $10,000 last year, and the budget committee moved it back down to 9. The select board's keeping it at 9 in hopes that the window repair might make a difference
yeah.
and make that okay.
Okay. So let's go to page 3, 4. So you're seeing a decrease in the government buildings by $5,300. Any questions on government buildings? All right. Cemeteries, this is based on Mark's presentation that he had given you, so I won't. And insurance, that's just the increase that we're projecting, or is that a firm?
Those are
one?
firm
Those are
numbers.
firm numbers, okay. Regional Association, again, firm, okay.
Yes.
Okay, so we're down to the police department. Any questions on Bob presenting his budget? We did for, okay, so we did project 2%. Why is Bob showing 9.4?
Because he asked for his extra market increase of $5,000 that the board granted him.
That's right. So it was 2% on, that's right.
He requested a larger than that
Yeah.
increase, and the board settled on $5,000. Most of the requests from department heads that were in salaries. So while, you all have been talking a lot about salaries, the board sympathizes with salaries, but wanted to keep it at a 2% increase overall. So that was one of the ways in which they tried to compromise with the bottom line.
And pretty much we matched anything that the police department. Any questions on page 4, because it's pretty much the same as what he was asking for or told you about. And we knew that we had to replace a cruiser video recording system, which he explained to you. So his budget is up 3.1%. Fire department, I know we discussed salaries. I have written a proposal to address that. However, I can't share it right now because I haven't shared it with the board of selectmen. So as soon as I do, and if it gets brought forward, then we would readdress that with you, okay?
So this is for the firefighter salary, like 142, is that?
141 and 142 is being addressed in this proposal that I
Thank you.
Was
done
there
up.
some discussion of a warrant article or something, putting something out in the warrant article?
For salaries?
You had asked that
Idea
question
about the,
last time.
Oh, well, just because we were talking about some major, the proposal is a good size increase, but not as major as I was thinking people were going down the way you were talking. So I was getting a little afraid. So it won't be on the warrant article as far as I'm concerned. I believe, it's my opinion that the board of selectmen will support this. It's reasonable, but it also is bringing us to where we need to be legally by law. And as soon as I can, I'll share it with you. Okay? All right. So there wasn't anything else that we had agreed, that everything that Mark had brought forward for his recommendations. So any further discussion on fire department? Okay. Building inspector, you'll see the increase based on what Caroline had told you before, and the increase for the land use administrator. Highway, we have gone with 2% at this point in time. Equipment,
I was missing that, David. Didn't we have a presentation from?
from George, yep.
Okay.
They have requested more, but we're going with 2%.
Does it include the new position, the new part-time position?
The new part-time position is not being recommended by the Board of Selectmen.
Okay, so this is the same staffing,
Same staffing.
2% increase.
2%
Okay,
increase.
thank you.
Any other questions on that? I think the line striping is based on additional ones that he's going to do. He's got the machine, but it's the cost of the paint, correct? Or, no, that's the one that we have to hire to come in because it's double line.
Yes.
Yes, okay, so based on some of the roads, we've had some complaints about some of the roads not being able to be visibly seen for the lines anymore, so we're gonna be trying to catch up on that and get that done. And also, street sweeping has to be done at least this year, with stormwater, 2 of them. And hopefully, based on what they have found, first time, we don't believe that we'll have to do it again after next year. Well, on just one, right? Maybe not one.
But news on that is always changing.
I know.
Because, you know, this coalition and its advisors from the state and from UNH and whatever other people have determined, you know, it's a group effort and everybody's trying to take a unified approach in what we do or don't do so that we, you know, hang or not, yeah.
Whatever that phrase is.
Yeah.
So I don't wanna, you know, say anything that there's a guarantee because we keep learning more and we, for example, the permit was the permit, whatever the permit said we were gonna do, and then you have to file an annual report, and the annual report is supposed to be about what you did your first permit year, but the permit and the report didn't match. You know, there are things coming down from EPA that just don't make sense. You know, like the permit says that you're gonna do A, B, and C, but then the report says A, B, and a half, and a Q. You know, like, and you just don't know what to do with that. So, you know, I wish I could say something more definitive. We're hoping we'll be done with 2 times sweeping after this year, but I don't know that.
Stay tuned for more info next year. When things happen.
Yeah.
But that's why we're budgeting it for a second one. Also, I don't know if this number reflects it. Did that number reflect the, George had negotiated for salt? Is that the better?
It has, that salt number has not changed, and it has not changed in years. And so sometimes it's overexpended and sometimes it's more or less right on. And I think for this year we'll be right exactly on. So yes, George negotiated a $2 per ton savings, which should save us $1,500 or $2,000 from what it would otherwise be. We don't really know that exactly because you never know what winter is gonna be like and how much salt we're gonna need. So no, that number wasn't adjusted.
So hopefully we're gonna stay within that budget, but it will help knowing that we had that reduction that George got us. Okay, so street lighting, we're keeping that the same. Down to sanitation, it is 2% across the board. Did we bring that, was that the one, that we did not do that, what they're saying, the $12 for the one person?
It is,
That-
it
is
is $12 for the one, it's
For the
2%
one
increase
person.
for everybody, except one of those people will be at $12 an hour, everybody, which infers that everybody else is less than that.
But that's because of the additional responsibilities that he has.
And he's been there a long time doing
Yeah.
those
Right.
additional responsibilities.
So he does the bailing, when the transfer station is closed. There are other things that he does, so he was, based on his years of service, he was getting an additional raise. Yes?
There was some talk here in the budget committee about, I think some of us were swayed at perhaps the good idea of bringing everybody up to at least $12 or something. Is that?
Well, there was conversation that George was saying that our surrounding areas are getting paid more.
Do we know what that would cost additionally? Even just roughly, I mean, there aren't many of them.
Part of it depends on whether or not this 4th position that doesn't currently exist will be expended or not.
Right.
So that's part of it,
So there's a 4th position
There's
in
an
here?
open position that hasn't been able to be filled, and we discussed it with George, that if that position didn't get filled, possibly the money that's in that position can be distributed among the others. The question was, because we purchased the scales, there's gonna be a little more work to be doing, to try to prepare everyone to know that the costs are gonna be based on weighing things, but they're not gonna, things aren't gonna change right away for the residents who come in and to bring things, because we're gonna have some time to discuss how much a couch really weighs and multiple, kind of giving an average. And that's gonna take a little while, so we're not gonna be weighing every single thing that comes in once we get the scales, but there's gonna be some additional time to do that. So they may have to have one of their workers, like the gentleman that is getting the additional pay, to work more there. So then, another place isn't. We also talked about maybe having a select day for
demo.
demo stuff.
There's not a lot of, using the scales in the way in which we would like to use them is going to be more labor intensive. So it's a compromise between paying people more and implementing the scales. And so while to her point, it's gonna take a while to do the research before scales are implemented, but if an increase is given across the board in lieu of this fourth position, then that may hold back the implementation of the scales. And implementing the scales is tied to what are we bringing in revenue to offset our disposal fees. So,
Yeah, we're struggling with that, because we don't believe that, because our numbers are much higher than our revenue sources, we don't believe we're getting enough, but you still have to do the research, because we're just saying a couch is not the same. Two different couches can weigh a lot of difference in weight, and so you're not, is it more the other way, or is it more, it's less weight? We don't know yet, and so we're gonna have to have some time to figure it out before we can adjust our, which is lots of revenue, because it is too we get really to understand.
This is, we're straying from the budget, but is it a drive-on, drive-off type of scale?
No.
Or is it-
No, it's not.
Okay, gotcha.
So it will be, you're gonna have to put stuff into, or on, into like a,
they're gonna have a small dumpster, and they're gonna tear weight it to 0, and then you can add stuff, and you'll get a printout that says you
Right,
put
so
20
that would
pounds,
be
and then they'll
very
tear it back to
labor-intensive.
0.
Yeah.
that's what makes it labor intensive. But, if we can do some couches and some chairs and some other stuff to get an average, that will even make it better.
Sure.
But we still might be off, clearly, but if you can come to a better average.
So you do like, say, the next 10 sofas, and something like that, and then you wouldn't have to do them anymore. You
Would be an
charge-
average, and this is what and then we'll have our
Something like
fee
that.
schedule all done again.
Yeah.
But there'll be, maybe demo would definitely be more of a contractor demo.
Yeah, so there's how much does a couch weigh, and that's altering the fee schedule, but to fully implement the scales to its best potential would mean that you're weighing them individually, maybe not even couches, but when people come with, I brought in my chicken coop that I disassembled in all kinds of pieces and parts, and it was pretty heavy, but I don't know how heavy, and it took up, maybe, a half of a pickup truck load, but I don't have a pickup truck, so I can't even relate it to that. So, they charged me $10, but in terms of what we do, so it's kind of random. So figuring out what mattresses weigh and couches weigh isn't gonna help people with their demolition debris and the 4 shingles they bring in. So we're still not gonna reap the benefit until we're using it really consistently, even if we're just, go ahead and, couch $30 over there, it's weight, so.
Can I continue? So I think I started this with the hourly wage of the attendants. So I think through all of this, I think there's a position that you're not filling. You perhaps might not fill it, perhaps might use it to supplement additionally some of the hourly wage. Otherwise, I guess I could just reconcile it thusly in my own head. If the board feels they're not having trouble finding attendance, then the wage is okay. If the board finds itself unable to fill, let's say, a position that opens up, then you make the adjustment, maybe take a contingency or whatever, and then you come back and talk to us about it.
Well, the
Is that
bottom line
fair?
is this open position's been open for so long because we can't find people to come in and do it. That's why we still have this open position. They have signs up at the transfer station all the time, looking for help, so it's difficult, so you don't want to lose what we have. We have some really good people working
Understood.
for us there, so we should compensate them as much as we can, and if we have this filled position because we can't get them. That's
We
why
can
we
at least
thought maybe we
retain.
could, yeah.
So are you saying that the likelihood is that you will, out of this budget, be able to increase the hourly wage of the current?
I believe that we have discussed it, and that is an opportunity that we think that we can do that with that money.
The board has not yet made that decision, but there's a consensus that they may be willing to do that.
Right, and
That's a across the board going forward increase, or are you talking about using that money for this year, giving them like a bonus and then seeing what you have
no, I
next
think
year?
it would be changing the
So
hourly rate.
basically raising the rate.
Yeah.
And if that line
Makes more
affords
sense.
it, it could possibly help with wages in the highway department if the select board wants to entertain that. It's all about how far can that line go, and, you know, the board hasn't made any decisions about that.
But you already have the barometer for doing it.
Yes, exactly. So hopefully that we can do that decision quickly and get that going. Let's see. Our lamprey fees are increasing, but based on our tonnage, it's going down. Our line.
Well, so we've split demo and MSW into two separate lines, so now you have not just 211, but 211 and 220, 212. So it's increasing quite a bit altogether,
Basing on the two of them. Yeah.
yes.
And that's based on the fact we just have more, we're just,
It's usage.
Yeah.
we're just more
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah. All right, they're also on the brush chipping, they're reducing it because they are burning, more, so they're not having to do the brush chipping. So that seems to be working, they have a real good system over there.
219,
I'm sorry?
219 hazardous waste for Dover. How much did we spend this year?
More than was budgeted.
Yeah, I know it was more.
It was over $1,800, and it was over $100 per resident who participated. It was extraordinarily expensive,
Mm-hmm.
and the most expensive it's been, but it's based on usage.
So that's why we increased it, because we
Yes.
overspent, yeah.
I just wonder why there was no number there, that's all.
Because it's done later in the year, so we hadn't yet paid the bill.
Because it's already been done, right, it's been in the
Yes.
summer.
Yes,
Okay.
and we
Well,
have
no,
by
it's
now
done in
paid
the
the
fall.
bill.
Usually in the fall.
It was just
It,
like a month and a
It
half
was,
ago.
yeah, it
Yeah.
was really pretty recently, but I know we've paid it, so you'll see that when I get you the actual October numbers.
I know it was over the 16.
Alrighty, so they're showing an increase in the sanitation budget of 30%, which seems high. Based on stuff out of our control. Ambulance is the second year in the contract, so that was nothing new. Animal control is under police department, and they're getting a 2% as well. Our community assistance isn't going to be changing at all. So when you get down to Parks and Rec, you'll see where the teen camp, saying when they're not funding it, but funding in a rec director down there. Any questions, and recommending the same going forward for winter rec basketball. Library proposed theirs tonight, and the other commissions and stuff is remaining the same. And then that is our second year in the lines? The second year, is that the second, the third year in the debt services?
Yes, it's third, it'll be the third.
With an operating budget of 2% increase. Any other questions?
Okay, Article 11 of this year's budget was to put in a new boiler.
Yes.
They were rolling that over, and 20,000 was coming out of SIP, and 5 was coming out of taxation. Where does that 5 come in this budget?
It doesn't because it's capital, and this is operating.
Okay, good, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
All right.
Jumping revenue?
Oh, where's my other one? I'm gonna let Caroline do that. Do you have another one?
It's here.
There,
Give you-
yeah.
Oh, I thought I had one.
John
Are
has
you
more,
gonna
he's
talk
putting
about
more.
it, Caroline? Or more?
Is that from the header standpoint sentence?
Yes, it is 2020. I've been having header problems, so thank you for pointing that out. I will
To say
I figured that's right.
fix that.
years of it, so they get it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I've used the same spreadsheet for 19, and then later in the year for 19, we have to report to the state what is revised revenue, and then the state adjusts that. So that's why you have more history than you would for other years, but then there is the anticipated 2020 line. This does not include capital items, because the board has not yet completely decided capital items. The bottom line is that we are projecting to bring in $7,200 more in offsetting operating income than the previous year. And so
Is it?
So if you look at the very bottom, there's a grand total that's colored, and then there's a line under that. And that's the total revenue without talking about the interfunds for capital items.
Oh, I see. So the first pink column is the actual, is what we were anticipating last
For
year?
19, yes,
And then the next pink column is what we're anticipating.
for
And that's
2020.
where there's just a $17,000 difference.
Yes. So, you know, so this does have October, figures through October. So the major differences are in that we I guess I'll take it by section. This is set up according to how DRA categorizes our income, which is not as intuitive and user-friendly as we'd like, but nonetheless. Land use change tax, there's no better place, it doesn't affect the general fund, so it shouldn't really be there, but at the same time, there's no better place for it to be. So DRA has kept it there. I'm not anticipating anything for next year, but of course, for those of you who went to the Conservation Commission meeting last night, we might get a considerable sum, which would not affect the operating budget because it goes into the land use change tax account. So that is why that is 0. Resident taxes we no longer do. Most of this category doesn't really apply to Rollinsford. Interest on taxes, when people do not pay their taxes when they are due, they are charged an interest rate which is set by statute. That interest rate has been decreased by the legislature from 12% to 8%. So we just decreased that line proportionally. So that's what's going on in that line, in that section. License permits and fees. As I remember being on the budget committee myself, being frustrated by these lines that are called other. So I will sympathize with you for a moment about that and explain other license permits and fees. I'm going to project my frustration onto you. So other license permits and fees are occupancy permits, alarm permits, planning fees, zoning fees, pistol permits, marriage license, births, deaths, and septic review fees, and some miscellaneous items. So we calculate revenues from those miscellaneous items, and they feed into that line, other licenses, permits, and fees. That's line 16 at the bottom of licenses, permits, and fees. So I'm decreasing that slightly because we've had a lot of, a little bit more than usual in planning fees, and so I brought that back down to a round number. Everything else should be relatively the same. Building permits have been pretty steady. The planning board did just approve a major subdivision off of Silver Street, so there's no way to know how many houses that might generate, but probably not more than the average that's been going on. And then motor vehicles have been holding steady at 665. We're on target to just about hit that or maybe go slightly over that this year. State sources, these are all obviously set by the state. Meals and rooms tax, we don't get until December, so there's no way to know what that is. So that's budgeted to be flatlined. The highway block grant, it has been changed slightly according to what the state says will happen. And then in line 21, state supplemental, the legislature decided to disperse extra revenues to all the municipalities, and and in two separate disbursements. So we received approximately $26,000 this year as unanticipated revenues. That will go into the general fund. We can do something with that or not do something with that, but right now it's in the general fund. But for next year, because we know it's coming, now it's anticipated revenue of about $26,000. Yes, it is. It would be nicer if they would more consistently fund things we need them to do, but, you know. Other taxes, railway is apparently going up. And then line 23 from other governments. We have applied for, and it looks like we are getting a stormwater asset management grant, and this will be its own warrant article. It's going to cost us money, but in the end, it will be a short-term loan which will be completely reimbursable. So it's not really gonna affect the tax rate, but it is gonna, in a minimal way, affect cash flow. There might be a small amount of interest paid for the purpose, but it's gonna help us with part of our permit, though it's a little bit separate from the permit too. And so what we're hoping to accomplish with the grant is to create a digital map of Rollinsford that has an overlay of our storm drain structures and how they interact and where they all are, that you can zoom in on and see when they were last cleaned and what their how maintained they are or not maintained, you know, what they might need for repairs, and then where they connect to. We may get as far as cameraing the pipes that connect the catch basins so that we can see how, you know, what their status is, what their life left might be. So part of the permit is about making sure our assets are in good repair, because that makes sure that things get into the river in a clean way. For example, by the Legion, with sinkholes, that's indicative of, you know, culverts collapsing, which means dirt's getting in there, which means dirt's getting out into the river, which is extra nutrients that shouldn't be there, and silt and so forth. And so that's part of what we're trying to minimize. The hope also someday is that having this interactive map and really being aware of these assets and what their state is that it can play into road maintenance, so that we know that when we're doing certain roadways that we really should replace the structures underneath, or else we really don't have to because they're fine. So that's what that's about. We're lucky to have, it seems so far, received that grant, but we have to formalize it through approval at town meeting.
That's the part that I'm
So they're telling us they're getting it, you know, that so far we're on, I'm not sure that we have our technical last bit of, you know, all I's dotted and T's crossed. You know, we're in a phase, I have emails that I have to check about that, but so far things look good, but I believe, and I could stand corrected, but at this point I believe we are approved for it, and as soon as we get approval at town meeting, we can start implementing it.
But should the town, in its infinite wisdom, decide not to do this, then we wouldn't get the 30,000.
Correct.
So that's, because it would be a wash.
Income from departments. That is another conglomeration of items. The library has a small book sale, they get copy fees. Parks and Rec gets their registration fees. Police have their outside details and parking fines and restitution. We have animal violations when people don't register their dogs. And then, of course, transfer station fees, stickers, but also when we sell scrap metal or people pay us for demolition debris and like that. So that is income from departments.
So Caroline, how much of that is police detail? And because I'm anticipating that it's a big a big number? And how confident are we that they will reach that? Because that's been it was.
That's a
it's
really
been
good question.
problematic.
Well, so that's a really good question. So it's, we pay our officers about between approximately a half and 2/3 of what we get in revenue from details, and that varies based on who's doing the details. So there's no way to have an actual direct correlation with what we're budgeting for details and what we're bringing in the revenue. So that being said, whatever we do in detail is a profit for the town. It accounts for the vehicle and the officer. So right now, the number in there is $35,735, which I would have to check where that number comes from. That might be an actual year-to-date. I don't, for this year. I don't know that without checking again. I'd have to look. So whatever you allow on the expense side, you don't have to expend unless you have the opportunity to expend it. But whatever you bring to offset that revenue is gonna be, at least a third more than what you're expending.
Right, but if we badly underestimate, so we use that overage, we bring in more revenue than we expend.
Right.
But if we budgeted anticipated revenue more than what we received,
Right.
that's being used to sort of subsidize the rest of the
Yes.
operating budget.
Yes.
So if we don't bring it in, then it has an impact on the
Right,
tax.
so this approximate third of that value that's profit, so to speak, can offset other things, and if you don't bring that in, yes, you're not expending the money, but that's pure profit that you could put on something else that's not happening, and it's hard to project that.
It's
I know that we-
administrative expense, it's really not profit.
Well, I understand,
IRS and
I
feds.
understand, for sure.
I know that we
Government.
hadn't brought in as much as we had thought we were going to do, but that was because of so many people that left the police department at the right time. We weren't able to accept those jobs because we had
We
to
had
do.
the opportunities, we just didn't
We
have the
just
staff.
had the opportunities, but now we are full staff and we're anticipating that
So
we
it
will
just
have the
should-
opportunity
yes.
and accept those opportunities to be able to do the job.
Yes, so he's more confident that we'll get closer to
Yes,
that
yes,
next year.
yeah.
So Caroline, did you say that within income from departments, that also includes the fees that the transfer station collects for the demo drop-off?
Yes.
But do we have, is that 153 or whatever with the actual, do we know what that actual breakdown is between between the demo fees, between the police department covering stuff?
Yes, so I have year-to-date actuals, but I don't know what the date is through which I have these actuals. So demo, I have approximately 14,500 year-to-date. Fees for refrigerators, tires, or other miscellaneous items, 3,800. Scrap metal, we sell the scrap metal, that's 3,300. Cardboard, 2,000. And $3,700 in stickers.
And what did you say the demo number was?
Demo right now is 14,589. But like I said, I don't know if that's through the end of September or the end of October, and I think it's October, but I'm not sure. So these are the numbers, like when you look at, the transfer station going up 30%, and we're
Right.
not meeting it in revenue.
But see, where I was getting to is that revenue that comes in for the demo fees compared to even the year-to-date for September for the demo hauling of 18 already indicates that we're, if it's all being equal, it already indicates we're undercharging by $4,000.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, so hauling is one thing. So for both demo and MSW, you're paying by weight, but then you're paying additionally per haul.
Okay, so that 213 is really just the haul, the weight is
The tipping
the
fee.
typical fee.
Yes. So there are two charges.
okay.
for
But
both.
so it's even worse then.
Yes,
Yeah.
Mhm.
yes.
So I mean, is it really a quick fix at the
Just increase
demo
it.
fee at the transfer station is to think about, okay, you said you brought in your chicken coop for $10. I mean, it's almost like, if you think it's 10, really charge 20, because it's a pretty good deal, right? We've all gotten rid of stuff
Mhm.
before. So is that a quick fix from for the transfer station to try to be a little, realize here's some actuals, and you are undercharging, and therefore what you should charge should be a lot.
We know we're gonna charge you, why not boost it?
Already, yeah, because it is, seems to be kind of like an eyeballing thing. When I brought stuff in, it's kind of,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
maybe
very
$40.
discretionary.
Right.
Yeah, good
That's
day.
why they wanna go to the weigh-in.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's why they wanna weigh it.
I know,
Yeah.
even before all that happened. and
Yeah,
stuff
I
like
think
that.
we'll talk to George and Ed and see if we can kind of go down
you can
that.
triple the cost for now and
Make
then
it
say,
up
you
this
know,
week.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But that's.
No, but it is a pretty good deal. I mean, it's a great service to have, I think,
Well-
between the tipping and and the hauling, and even the extra service that the guys have to put into it. I mean, it just should be a full cost, and people would still be happy.
Yes.
Yeah.
But let me provide for you some context. We're currently paying approximately $69 a ton to dispose of MSW or demo. That is because we have a contract through our regional co-op with Waste Management. It's a 10-year contract. We're in, I think, year 4. Other communities are paying $100, $120 a ton. So when this contract expires, you know, we hope that we can keep this group pricing, but the group might dissolve, or, you know, they might just not provide that same kind of pricing. So I anticipate and I'm advocating for a lot of aggressive changes at the transfer station because we gotta prepare for what a
Sure.
potential huge uptick. So you're right, it's a great deal, and that's a problem because the surrounding communities pay per throw. You know, they pay for their bags, and so we've got, you know, people who wanna continue using our transfer station after they move away, or they wanna bring in their brother's trash, or they have property, you know, their landlord, and they just wanna bring it in. So as long as we're not doing the pay per throw, which I know all the residents hate to do because it's annoying, we're gonna be, you know, targeted as the cheap good deal or the free deal for the trash. Composting, I don't know if you've noticed that some of the lower level, like the less pricey restaurants locally use a commercial composting service, Mr. Fox. So you have recycling and trash and then compost, and you can put silverware in it and, you know, various items.
Plastic.
Plasticware that's not really plastic, yeah.
Cornstarch free.
Yeah, so they buy, yes, so they have now gone up to the municipal scale of this, and Portsmouth is doing it. Approximately a third of trash weight is compost. So you have to buy special bags, which maybe as a town we could subsidize. If they're not already less expensive, we might subsidize them to try to incentivize people to compost. And you can bring them in your special bags and there's a compost pile, and then they kind of take that at a cheaper price than the tipping fee. But it also keeps that stuff out of the trash and incentivizes recycling, because when throwing things away is free, you have no incentive to compost at home or recycle. So I would suggest that we still require people to bring in their registration to get a transfer station sticker, but that the sticker be free, and that they're paying for bags, and they're paying less for compost bags, and then, you know, will not be feeling the pressure from the region for all these other people who, you know, want the cheap deal. So that's the long-term view, but not this year.
But in the meantime, though, Joe has a good idea that
Yes.
we should, you know, hope that maybe the board can.
And also, how about we build some awareness that, you know, I mean, it's not really hard to throw your compostable stuff into the woods. And have a
Well, but do
pile.
it responsibly, because we get code issues about, they see a rat, and of course
Yeah, yeah.
rats live in the world, but because your neighbor has a compost pile, clearly it's because the compost pile, and then you
Definitely,
get like,
yes.
so we have to be careful about the
Yeah, I get
education
it.
of that, but yes,
But it could save a
absolutely.
significant amount of money, clearly.
Absolutely,
If people would just take it upon themselves
Yes.
to perhaps.
yes, and you get more mileage out of the bag that you're paying to throw away.
Right, yes.
Because you're taking a, you know,
That's-
a third maybe of its volume out of there, so we'll see if that happens or not. So anyway, income from departments, it's all the departments essentially. And I've decreased it rather arbitrarily by $10,000 due to teen camp going away, but otherwise pretty level. Sale of municipal property, we're fortunate that the highway department was able to not put its truck out to bid as we would have done in the past, but they actually did a private sale, which,
No, we actually had to put it out to bid, but
well,
it
we
was the
did
same
private out to
person who
bid.
did it.
It was
and
the same
only
person, yes, we did
But we
it,
have to put it out for bid,
yes, we did.
yes.
We put it out to sale and then
And then we-
forgot, oh yes,
yeah,
the
we had to
bid,
put it-
and then we,
yeah.
yeah, 'cause
It
that
was
was.
only one person and the same person, so it was
Right.
okay.
So what, we're putting that down to, closer to what we might do in a given year. So that's for cemetery lots and vehicles, we'll have at least one cruiser, but possibly two to get rid of. Interest on investments, we have a treasurer who's doing an incredible job and has diverted most of our cash into an investment account, which has got a much better yield than, we've been receiving. So that's up quite a bit.
It's phenomenal. So what my question is, it's just a different account?
It's a different kind of account.
So
And
maybe
I
my
don't-
real question is it reproducible? I mean, in other words, should the treasurer be replaced by another treasurer? Do we know what this magic sauce is, the secret sauce is that he's doing, so that it's reproducible by another treasurer? Because the difference, I mean,
It's
this is
astounding.
it's astounding. This is subsidizing a lot of expense on our appropriation side to go,
Yes.
side to go from $500 to $36,000, and you hate to lose that. So,
Sure, so
is there any documentation? Is
there's
there
no
any?
documentation. We have no documentation of, you know yourself, of nearly anything here in town, and so this is no exception. So I think it's a phone call to Citizens Bank to say, what kind of account is this again? You know, I know, we're still at the point of institutional knowledge where we have, and that's all that exists around here. Nothing is documented. The board is taking a really, aggressive approach in trying to implement policy. And that's great, and it needs to happen, and they should be applauded for that, because that's a lot of work for them. But it's, so that's a heavier lift in my office in preparing for that, which is distracting from the fact that, yes, aside from policy, we still need to document what we do so that other people can come in and do it. We
Well,
don't have that.
maybe, maybe I don't mean like just document, does somebody know what's going on so that it could be reproducible?
I do know what he does. So tax bills go out twice a year. After we get the bulk of the cash, he moves the bulk of the cash over into the investment account and it sits there. We pay the school a large sum from what we raise in taxes for them. We pay that monthly. It comes directly out of the investment account so that it stays there as long as possible. And then he transfers money into the operating checking account as needed until we get into like cash crunch time. And he's freaking out right now because, we're only barely,
Right.
it's cash crunch time. And so, he's got both kind of near zero and mostly in the operating budget. But then next month, as we've got all the tax money in, he's gonna make major transfers into the investment account again.
Well, it is an astounding difference, and my hat's off to the
Yes.
treasurer.
Mhm.
Indeed, we're all benefiting from that. It's good. Okay, so other is our cell tower lease. The select board renewed the lease on the cell tower, which should generate more income. It's not really clear, but we were told by the management firm that they don't really, that cell companies don't really want to upgrade their equipment on towers that have leases that are near to expiring, which means like within 15 or 20 years. So the board, within the last year, extended the cell tower lease for another 75 years, I believe. So that should help that revenue. So in any case, other means cell tower lease, hydro, rents on properties, which is really just the Turcotte Field next to Scoutland is rented by a farmer who pays $1,500 a month for that. And also tomb rentals, should somebody pass away in winter, they're put in a tomb and pay a rental fee for that until they can be buried in spring. Reimbursements, like Homeland Security reimbursements go in this line, and then miscellaneous reimbursements, like when people bounce checks and they bring it back, that's in here. And then other miscellaneous revenue. And other miscellaneous revenue, I don't have a breakdown of that. I'm showing, what is that? So it's the historical committee, but the historical committee isn't very much of that. They do sales, so, historical I raised my own question, so I will get back to you about what other miscellaneous revenue is within the other line in the miscellaneous revenue category. Oh, it's the hydro, I moved hydro, that's what it is.
So my question was about hydro. What
It is
how
hydro.
is hydro trending? That's one. And two, what are the relicensing folks anticipating a decrease in the revenue because of the changes to our new license? Because one of the things that I know that they were talking about was having to reduce, because of EPA and concerns about fish life, is to reduce the amount of, I don't know what the technical terms are, but the throughput of the amount of water that can be used.
Yes.
Would reduce the revenue. Did you know?
I'm not sure that that's true, because there, as part of the relicensing, they've had to do work to the dam, which includes replacing the boards along the top of the dam that have worn away and they get knocked off by tree limbs and such, and so they've replaced those. And I believe part of the reason for that is because it helps to direct water through where,
The river run or something.
the stock.
Penstock?
Penstock, thank you, through the penstock. So I don't know that that's true, I'm not the engineer of these things. So as far as trending goes, I don't really have an answer for that. We seem pretty level, but I don't know what that means for the new license. And I don't think anything about the license necessarily changes our contract with them. And I have to look at our contract with Green Mountain Power, which is different from the renewal with FERC.
Right. My concern is that the changes to the licensing, and the requirements will result in Green Mountain being able to generate less power, and therefore we would get less revenue. It's not happening now. I think, when is it, 2020?
Next year, I think it is.
Is it? Really? 2021?
I think it's 20.
Fading.
And this is the dam by the mill,
Yes,
That's-
upstream of the mill.
and the Cumberland Farms, that's Berwick or South Berwick?
That's South Berwick.
So is the relicensing likely to have an impact on our hydro revenue?
Not that I'm aware of.
2020?
Not that I'm aware of.
Might it be a good question to ask Green Mountain?
I can see what our contract says and when our contract expires, because I think that's really, yes, I will look into it.
I'm not sure that that's relevant, only because it's the amount of, it's not a question of the contract we have with Green Mountain, it's a question of, is the
The flow.
licensing
I
going
understand.
to require things that will reduce the
I
flow?
will get back to you, yes.
Thank you.
So, in any case, given what we see of the operating budget, which does not include, interfund operating is entirely to do with capital items. So we are close to level, up about $7,000 from the previous year, up about $7,000. But as we discussed about where those things come from, we don't really know. You never really know. Is there any questions about that?
Nice job, thank you.
Thank you, Carol.
So do we have any other business that anybody wants to bring up at 9 o'clock?
Was there a bias, was there a bias? What is the next legislative session? I mean,
The next meeting, the
It's the
question
4th.
is,
Yes, it's December 4th at 6 p.m.
at 6 p.m.
and that's the one where we have water and sewer first, right?
Yeah.
And then we'll do the
First
delivery.
deliberative session,
Okay.
which can only be town and possibly water if we're ready, because we will not approve for the school until.
Correct. That's why we, And I will not be here on the 11th, but Suzanne has agreed to chair the meeting.
Rumble.
And motion to adjourn? All in favor? See you later.
Thank you.
Who's Mr. Fox to compost?
All right, yeah, I appreciate that.
Take make so much do you compost at home?
I know, I don't have time.
Well, Mr. Fox uses all the time, you just throw it into a bucket and they come and get it every 2 weeks.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and they have a
Together.
round, so I don't have to drive to Dover.
There you go.
You may hang together.
Yeah.
But those